It was Christmas Eve, 2023. The snow was falling fast, thick and heavy, covering the sidewalks in a white blanket. My little car groaned as it pulled into my son Michael's driveway. The wipers screeched, barely keeping up with the storm. Still, my heart was light. I had been waiting for this night for weeks. I was finally going to spend Christmas with my son, my daughter-in-law Sarah, and maybe finally feel like part of a family again. I clutched the bag of gifts in my lap. They weren't much, not compared to the shiny packages I knew would already be under their tree, but each one meant something. A scarf I had chosen carefully for Sarah. A photo album I had put together for Michael, filled with his childhood pictures. And a bottle of wine I could barely afford but wanted to bring, just to show them I cared. As I stepped out of the car, the cold slapped me in the face. 35 degrees, my phone had said earlier. I thought I'd only have to walk a few steps into a warm house, so I hadn't bothered with a heavy coat. My thin jacket was no match for the sharp December wind. Still, I smiled as I walked carefully up the icy path to the front door. The house looked like something from a Christmas card, warm lights glowing in every window, wreath on the door, laughter spilling out from inside. For a moment, I felt like I was stepping into a dream. I knocked. My heart was pounding, like a little girl waiting to be let into a party. The door opened just a crack. Sarah's face appeared. Her makeup was perfect, her blonde hair shining under the porch light. But her eyes were cold. "Clarice," she said, flat and sharp. "What are you doing here?" My smile faltered. "Michael invited me. For Christmas dinner." She glanced back into the house, then stepped outside, pulling the door nearly shut behind her. The heat of the house disappeared instantly. I felt the sting of snowflakes landing on my cheeks. "Look," she whispered, her tone clipped. "Tonight isn't a good night. We have important guests inside. Michael's business partners. Their families. It's not appropriate for you to be here." My breath caught. "But Michael called me. He said he wanted me here. He told me 3 weeks ago." Sarah's lips curled slightly, like she was tired of explaining. "Michael says a lot of things. He feels sorry for you. But that doesn't mean you can just show up and expect to be included in everything." Her words sliced through me. I tightened my grip on the bag of gifts. "I brought presents," I said softly. "I've been looking forward to this for weeks." She glanced at the bag, her expression unreadable. "Just leave them on the porch. I'll hand them out later." And then it happened. She turned her head back toward the living room, her voice rising just enough for me to hear through the half-open door. "God, that old woman is such a pain," she said loudly, her tone dripping with annoyance. "She just shows up whenever she wants, expecting us to drop everything for her. Nobody can stand her anymore." And then I heard it. Michael's laugh. My son's laugh. Joining the others. My knees nearly buckled. My own son. The boy I had raised alone, the boy I had sacrificed everything for, was laughing while his wife mocked me in front of strangers. The sound of it froze me deeper than the winter air. I whispered, "Did you hear that? What you just said?" Sarah turned back, her eyes gleaming. "Hear what?" she asked casually. "That I'm a pain. That nobody can stand me." She shrugged, not a shred of guilt on her face. "I was just being honest. Older people don't always realize when they're being difficult. Maybe it's time you started spending holidays at the senior center. They have programs for people like you. People like me." I felt something snap inside me. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was something deeper, like the last thread of hope had been cut. "I raised that boy alone," I whispered. My voice shook. "I gave him everything I had." "And he's grateful," Sarah said, her tone dismissive. "But gratitude doesn't mean he has to sacrifice his social life for you." Through the window, I saw Michael, my son, sitting comfortably by the fire, wine glass in hand, laughing with people who weren't family, at least not mine. He didn't even glance toward the door. He didn't wonder why his mother was standing outside in the freezing cold. "I'll go," I said finally, my words breaking in the icy air. "Good," Sarah said quickly, already turning back toward the warmth. "And next time, maybe call first. Don't just assume you're welcome." The door closed with a quiet click. I stood there, staring at the wood grain, listening to the muffled laughter from inside. The gifts in my hands felt like stones. Heavy, useless, unwanted. Slowly, I bent down and set them by the door, just like she said. The snow was falling harder now. My coat was damp, my fingers stiff. I walked carefully back down the icy path, my shoes slipping on the frozen ground. When I reached my car, I turned back one last time. The house glowed warm and golden, full of joy. My son was in there, surrounded by people who mattered. People who weren't me. I slid into the driver's seat, my body shaking, not just from cold, but from the ache in my chest. My hands trembled as I tried to put the keys in the ignition. For a long moment, I didn't start the car. I just sat there, watching the snow build on the windshield, listening to the muffled sound of celebration drifting from the house. My house once. My family once. 35 degrees. Locked out by my own son. The heartbreak was crushing, but beneath it, something else was stirring. A quiet fire, small but steady. A voice inside whispering, "This isn't the end. Not for me." I wiped my tears, started the engine, and drove off into the night. But as I pulled away, I knew one thing for certain. They thought they had shut me out forever. What they didn't know was that I was just getting started. The road home that night felt endless. Snow piled higher on the sidewalks, and every red light stretched like a punishment. My hands gripped the steering wheel, still trembling from the cold, and from the sound of my son's laughter echoing in my ears. By the time I reached my small apartment, my body was frozen, but it was nothing compared to how hollow I felt inside. I unlocked my door, flicked on the lamp, and sat down in my recliner. The tiny Christmas tree in the corner twinkled with dollar store lights, its branches holding ornaments that had followed me through decades of Christmases. I stared at one ornament in particular, a clay handprint Michael had made when he was 6. His little fingers pressed into the soft clay, painted red and green. On the back, in my handwriting, were the words, "Michael's first grade Christmas, 1988. My throat tightened. That handprint used to be my treasure. Tonight, it felt like a cruel reminder of everything I had lost. As I sat there in the quiet, memories started flooding back. Memories of a different time, when Michael's smile was only for me, when his little arms wrapped around my neck like I was his whole world. Michael was born on a rainy Tuesday in April of 1982. I still remember the smell of the hospital room, the exhaustion, the joy. My husband Jim held him first, lifting him gently, whispering, "Clarice, we made something perfect." And for a while, life was perfect. Jim worked long shifts at the auto plant, coming home covered in grease, but always with enough energy to scoop Michael up and spin him around. I worked part-time at the elementary school, so I could be there when Michael got off the bus. We weren't rich, but we had love. Then, when Michael was just 8 years old, it all shattered. Jim collapsed at work. Heart attack. 42 years old. Gone before the ambulance even made it to the hospital. I can still hear Michael's voice the night after the funeral. He crawled into bed with me, his small body shaking. "Is Daddy coming back, Mommy?" he asked, his voice so small, so scared. And I had to say the words that broke us both. "No, honey, it's just us now." From that night on, I carried the weight of 2 parents. The bills didn't stop for grief. The mortgage, the car payment, groceries, they all came crashing down on me. My part-time job wasn't enough. I picked up a second job, waiting tables on the night shift. Later, I added a third, cleaning offices on weekends. Every dollar went toward keeping us afloat. But every extra shift meant missed moments, missed Christmas concerts, missed field trips, missed dinners. I'll never forget the Christmas play when Michael was 10. I had begged my boss for the night off, but someone else called in sick, and I was forced to stay. Michael scanned the audience for me, and when he didn't see my face, his smile faded. A neighbor filmed the show for me, but when I tried to watch it later, my tears blurred the screen. And yet, I told myself it was worth it. All of it. Every sleepless night, every bowl of cereal for dinner, every sore muscle, because it meant Michael had a chance at a better future. When he was 13, I finally landed a steady job at the county clerk's office. For the first time in years, I had benefits, regular hours, and enough money to quit the diner. I thought it would be the start of a new chapter for us. But by then, Michael had changed. He had grown used to doing everything alone, his own laundry, his own homework, even cooking simple meals. He was polite but distant. "How is school?" I'd ask. "Fine." "How is the game?" "Fine." Every answer was short, careful, as though I was a stranger sharing the house instead of his mother. I told myself it was normal teenage behavior, but in my heart I knew better. A wall had formed between us, brick by brick, built out of all the nights I hadn't been there. Still, I pushed forward. He was a good student, stayed out of trouble, made it into a state college. I nearly collapsed from relief at his high school graduation. We had survived. I even took out a second mortgage to help him pay for college. I told him not to worry, that his education was the most important thing. I didn't tell him I was skipping meals, wearing thrift store clothes, and living on coffee to make ends meet. At his college graduation, I sat in the bleachers and cheered louder than anyone else. When he hugged me afterward, he said, "Thanks, Mom, for everything." For a moment, my heart soared. But then, 2 weeks later, he moved across the country for work. The years that followed were filled with short phone calls, rushed visits, birthdays where I mailed a card and got only a text in return. When he met Sarah, those calls got even shorter. I remember the first time I saw her at their wedding. She was stunning. Elegant dress, hair shining like silk, standing in a ballroom that felt like another world to me. Her family's money dripped from every detail. I wore my best Walmart dress and comfortable shoes, knowing I stood out in all the wrong ways. When Michael introduced me, she smiled politely, but her eyes measured me, judged me. From that moment, I knew she didn't see me as family. She saw me as an obstacle. And over time, Michael stopped being my son in the way he once was. Phone calls grew rare. My voice was always on speakerphone. Sarah was always nearby. Even when I landed in the hospital with pneumonia 2 years ago, he didn't come. Sarah told him it wasn't urgent. And he believed her. Sitting in my recliner that Christmas Eve, the ornaments glowing softly in the dark, all those memories pressed down on me. I had given Michael everything I had, my money, my health, my youth, my love. And now, at 70 years old, I had nothing to show for it but silence and loneliness. But as the hours ticked by, something inside me shifted. For years, I had begged for scraps of love, accepted excuses, swallowed hurt after hurt. Tonight, though, the truth had slapped me harder than the winter wind ever could. Maybe I had been erased from their lives. Maybe I had been locked out. But I was still here. And I wasn't going to fade away quietly. The days after Christmas passed in a blur. I went through my routine, making coffee, tidying up my little apartment, watching the evening news, but everything felt hollow. I moved like a ghost through my own life. Every night, I replayed that moment on Michael's porch. Sarah's cruel voice. Michael's laugh. The sound burned in my ears until I fell asleep, and sometimes even in my dreams, I heard it all over again. By December 28th, I had almost convinced myself this was just the way things would be. Quiet. Empty. Forgotten. That morning, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, and I almost ignored it. At my age, strange numbers usually mean scams or salespeople. But something in me, maybe instinct, maybe hope, made me answer. "Hello." My voice sounded small in the silence of my apartment. The voice on the other end was young, male, polite. "Excuse me, is this Clarice Henderson?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "Who's calling, please?" He paused, like he had to gather his courage. "My name is David Morrison. I think you might be my grandmother." For a moment I thought I misheard. My heart stopped, and the room tilted. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "What did you just say?" "My grandmother," he repeated, his tone gentle but uncertain. "My biological grandmother. I've been looking for you for almost 2 years." I sank into the kitchen chair, my fingers gripping the phone so tightly they hurt. I don't understand." "Who are your parents?" "My mother is Sarah Morrison," he said. Then, after a pause, "Well, Sarah Henderson now. She married your son Michael 3 years ago. But before that, she was married to my father. I'm her son." The blood rushed to my ears.
Sarah.
A son? She never once mentioned a child. Not in all the years she'd been with Michael. Not once. "How old are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely steady. 25, he replied. "I live in Seattle. I work in tech." He hesitated, then said quietly, "Mom always told me Michael's family was complicated, that you were difficult, unstable. She even said you struggled with alcohol. She told me it was better if we didn't have contact." I pressed my hand to my mouth, fighting back nausea.
Lies.
"All lies." "David," I whispered, "none of that is true. I've never even met you until this moment. I didn't even know you existed." On the other end, I heard him take a shaky breath. "I know that now. That's why I'm calling. 6 months ago, I hired a private investigator. Something about Mom's stories never sat right with me. The investigator couldn't find a single record of you being unstable or any of the things she claimed. When I confronted her, she finally admitted she'd been lying. That's when I started looking harder.
And now,
I found you." Tears welled in my eyes, spilling before I could stop them. "All these years," I choked out. "I thought I had no family left. And all this time, I had a grandson?" "Yes," David said softly. "And I want to know you, if you'll let me." I pressed the phone to my cheek, closing my eyes. The warmth in his voice was like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Of course I'll let you," I whispered. "Of course." There was a pause. Then his voice turned firm. "I'm not just here for a phone call, Grandma. I'm here in town. I flew in yesterday, and I was planning to drive over to Mom and Michael's house today to confront them both. But before I did, I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to hear your side." My chest tightened. "David, I need to warn you. Your mother, she and I, we don't get along. She's made it very clear I'm not welcome in their lives. On Christmas Eve, she wouldn't even let me into their house." "What do you mean?" His tone sharpened. So I told him. Every detail. Driving through the snow. Standing on the porch in the cold. Sarah's mocking voice. The laughter from inside. Michael's silence. My drive home alone. David didn't interrupt. But as I spoke, I could hear his breathing grow heavier, sharper. By the time I finished, the line was so quiet I thought he'd hung up. Then he spoke, his voice low with anger. "Jesus Christ. She left you outside in the cold? On Christmas? It's not your fault, sweetheart," I said softly. "You didn't know. You were protecting yourself, believing what she told you." "No," his voice was firm now, filled with a conviction that startled me. "No more lies. No more letting her control everything. I want to meet you.
Today.
Right now. And then, I want to go to their house together. I want them to see that their lies didn't work, that we found each other." My heart pounded. The thought of facing Michael and Sarah again terrified me. But the thought of facing them with David, my grandson, by my side gave me courage I didn't know I had. "Yes," I said finally, my voice trembling. "I want that too." An hour later, I heard a car door slam outside my apartment building. I rushed to the window, pulling back the curtain. A tall young man stepped out of a rental car, looking around nervously. When he spotted my window, I waved. He smiled. Even from a distance, I saw it, the same eyes Michael had when he was young. Brown, warm, familiar. When I opened the door, he was standing there holding a bouquet of flowers, shifting nervously from foot to foot. "Hi, Grandma," he said. His voice cracked just a little, and I burst into tears right there in the doorway. "Oh, honey," I whispered, pulling him into my arms. He hugged me tightly, solid and real, not just a dream. "I can't believe this. I can't believe I have a grandson." David laughed through his own tears. "And I can't believe I finally found you." We stepped into my small apartment together. He glanced around at the modest furniture, the little Christmas tree, the photos of Michael on every shelf. His eyes softened. "She took so much from us," he said quietly. "But she can't take this moment. She can't stop us now." I nodded, wiping my eyes. For the first time in years, I felt something more than pain. I felt hope. And as David sat down, telling me about his life, his work, his dreams, I knew this wasn't just a reunion. It was the beginning of something that was going to change everything. When David stepped inside my apartment, I felt like the air shifted. It was as if all the years of silence, all the pain of being forgotten, cracked open just a little, and in walked hope. He set the flowers down on my tiny table, looking around the room with curious eyes. His gaze landed on the shelves crowded with old photo frames. Every single one of them had Michael's face, school pictures, graduation, birthdays. My son's whole childhood lined the walls. David walked over slowly, picking up one of the frames. It was Michael at age 7, missing his 2 front teeth, grinning proudly at the camera with a popsicle stick ornament hanging around his neck. "Wow," David whispered. "He looks just like me when I was that age." I swallowed hard, blinking back tears.
Yes.
"You have the same eyes, the same smile." For a moment, we just stood there, staring at the photograph. It was like looking at the past and the present all at once. My son as a child, my grandson as a man. We sat down on the couch, and David leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Tell me about yourself, Grandma. I want to know everything. What you like, what you've been through, what my mom never told me." His words broke me open. Nobody had asked me that in years. For so long, I'd been a shadow in my own story. So I told him. I told him about the nights I worked 3 jobs to keep Michael fed. The weekends I spent cleaning offices instead of going to church or family events. The way I used to sneak into Michael's room at night just to watch him sleep because it was the only time I felt like I wasn't failing him. David listened intently, his eyes never leaving mine. "She told me you were selfish," he said softly. "She said you didn't care about anyone but yourself. But that's the exact opposite of what I'm hearing." "She lied," I said simply.
To you.
"To Michael. To everyone." He nodded slowly. "I know that now. That's why I needed to find you. I didn't want to live under her version of the truth anymore." After a while, I asked about him. "What about you, David? Tell me about your life." His face lit up. "Well, I work in Seattle for a software company. I build security systems. I bought a condo last year. I have a dog named Murphy. He's a golden retriever, spoiled rotten. And I've been dating a nurse named Emma for 2 years. She's amazing." As he talked, I smiled through tears. He was kind, hardworking, humble, and so full of life. Everything Sarah had tried to hide from me was right here, sitting on my couch, smiling at me like family should. But then his expression darkened. "You know what hurts the most? All these years, I've been sending Mom money. Tens of thousands of dollars. She said it was for family expenses, medical bills, home repairs, even Christmas. I thought I was helping all of you." I frowned. "David, none of that money ever reached me. Not a penny." His jaw tightened. That's what I was afraid of. She pocketed it. Used me like a bank account. My stomach churned. The vacations. The designer clothes. The expensive cars Sarah flaunted while I scraped by on Social Security. Now I knew where it came from. I feel sick, David muttered, running a hand through his hair. I could have been helping you, Grandma. I could have made your life easier. Instead, she made sure you struggled, while she lived like royalty on my dime. I touched his arm gently. Don't blame yourself. You believed your mother. Children are supposed to trust their parents. That's not a crime. But David shook his head, his eyes flashing with determination.
No.
This stops now. She can't keep manipulating us. I want to go to their house, Grandma, with you. Together. I want them to see us side by side. I want them to see that their lies didn't work. My heart thudded. The thought of standing on Michael's porch again terrified me. But with David beside me, I felt braver than I had in years. I took a deep breath. All right. If you're sure, then yes. Let's go. Before we left, David looked around my apartment again, his face clouded with sadness. You don't deserve this, he said quietly. Living in a tiny apartment, barely making ends meet. While they sit in that mansion, sipping wine, laughing at you. I get by, I said softly. That's not the point, he shot back. Families should take care of each other. Real family doesn't leave their own mother out in the cold. Real family doesn't erase a grandmother from her grandson's life. His words hit me deep. For the first time in so long, I felt seen. Truly seen. An hour later, David stood at the door, car keys in hand. Are you ready? He asked. I nodded, though my stomach churned with nerves. Ready. We stepped outside, the air crisp and sharp. As we walked toward his car, I glanced up at the winter sky. The clouds were heavy with snow, the street quiet except for the crunch of our shoes. I thought of Christmas Eve, of standing in the cold alone. Tonight felt different. Tonight, I wasn't alone. I slid into the passenger seat, clutching my purse tight. David started the engine, his jaw set, eyes fixed on the road ahead. As the car rolled forward, I looked at him. This grandson I had only just met, but who already felt like a missing piece of my soul. I whispered a silent promise to myself. They tried to erase me, but I'm still here. And with David by my side, they're about to find out just how wrong they were. The drive to Michael's house felt both too long and too short. David gripped the steering wheel tightly, his jaw set, his eyes forward. I sat beside him, my hands folded in my lap, twisting nervously at the strap of my purse. My heart hammered so loudly I could almost hear it in my ears. Part of me wanted to tell him to turn back, to forget this confrontation, to let me fade quietly into the background like I'd been forced to for so long. But another part of me, the part that had been locked outside on Christmas Eve, wanted this more than anything. I wanted my son to see the truth. As we turned into the familiar neighborhood, my stomach clenched. The houses were lined with twinkling Christmas lights, wreaths still hanging on front doors. Families inside probably sat around leftover pie and cocoa, still basking in the afterglow of the holiday. And then there was Michael's house, larger, brighter, more perfect than the rest. There it is, I whispered, almost to myself. David glanced at me. You okay? I forced a breath. I don't know, but I'm ready. He gave a short nod. Good. Because this ends tonight. We parked in the driveway. Michael's BMW sat polished in the garage. Sarah's white Mercedes gleamed beside it. The sight of their wealth, their comfort, stung deep in my chest. David cut the engine and turned to me. Remember, you're not alone this time. We're doing this together. I nodded, clutching his hand. His palm was warm, steadying. We walked up the path. My feet remembered the icy steps from Christmas Eve, how they'd slipped, how my body had trembled in the cold. But this time, I wasn't shivering. This time, My heart burned with something sharper than fear. David pressed the doorbell. From inside, I heard footsteps. The lock clicked and the door opened. Michael stood there, wearing a casual sweater, looking relaxed, until his eyes landed on me. His face tightened, his posture stiffened. "Mom," he said carefully. Then his gaze shifted to David, confusion flickering across his features. "Who is this?" Before I could answer, Sarah appeared behind him. She was mid-sentence, but when her eyes landed on David, she froze. Her face drained of color. Her hand gripped Michael's arm, nails digging into the fabric of his sweater. "David," she breathed, her voice sharp with panic. "What are you doing here?" David's face was stone. "Hello, Mom. I thought it was time I met my step-grandmother. You know, the one you told me was dead." Michael blinked, his head jerking between them. "Sarah? What is he talking about?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Michael, I can explain." "Explain what?" His tone was rising. "Who is this?" David stepped forward. "I'm her son. Her real son. The one she never told you about." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael stared at Sarah like she'd grown another head. "You have a son? You told me you didn't have any children." "I said it was complicated," Sarah stammered. "I told you he was better off with his father's family." "My father's dead," David cut in, his voice cold. "Has been since I was 12. There was never any father's family. It's always been just me and her. Until she decided I didn't fit into her perfect little life with you." Michael's face turned pale. He stepped back, running a hand through his hair, muttering, No, this can't be happening." Sarah reached for him, but he flinched away. "Michael, please. I did it for us. I didn't want complications. I wanted us to have a clean start." "Complications?" David's voice thundered now. "Is that what you call family? Is that what you call me? Or her?"
He pointed at me.
Michael turned toward me, his face crumpling. "Mom, is this true? Did she really?" I met his eyes, my own brimming with tears. "Yes, Michael. She lied. She told David I was unstable, dangerous. She told him I was dead. And on Christmas Eve, she locked me out of your home while you laughed inside." Michael's mouth opened, then shut. He looked stricken, horrified. Sarah's mask slipped then. Her voice sharpened. "Don't listen to them. They're trying to turn you against me. David has always been ungrateful. And your mother has always been a burden. I was protecting you." David let out a bitter laugh. "Protecting him? Is that what you call taking my money and lying about where it went?" Michael's head snapped toward him. "What money?" I stayed silent, letting David speak. "For the last 3 years, I've been sending Mom," his voice dripped with sarcasm, "money. $50,000. I thought I was helping with medical bills, house repairs, family expenses. But none of it reached Grandma. She stole it. Every dime." Michael's face twisted.
"Sarah."
"Is this true?" Sarah's lips trembled, but her eyes hardened. I used it for us. For our life together. For vacations, for the house, for—" "You stole from your own son," Michael interrupted, his voice breaking. "You lied to me about everything. About him. About my mother. About all of it." The room's tension crackled. I could feel years of lies unraveling in seconds. Sarah glared at me then, pure venom in her eyes. "This is all your fault," she spat. "If you had just stayed out of our lives, none of this would have happened." I straightened, my voice steady. "You're right. If I had stayed away, you could have kept bleeding my son dry. You could have kept David believing I didn't exist. But I didn't stay away. And now the truth is here." Michael stared at his wife, his hands trembling. "How could you?" he whispered. "How could you do this to me, to us?" Sarah's face twisted, desperate. "Because I love you," she cried. "Because I didn't want to lose you to them. I gave you everything. Don't throw it away over lies." David's voice was ice. The only lies here are yours. And then suddenly he moved. He strode to the front door and, with one swift kick, slammed it wide open. The wood cracked against the wall with a thunderous bang. The icy air swept into the living room, rattling picture frames. Sarah screamed, "David, what are you doing?" He turned, his face shadowed with fury. "I'm done. Done with your manipulation. Done with your control. Done watching you hurt people I love." He looked directly at Sarah, his voice low, sharp, final. "You're finished, Mom." The words hung heavy in the air, like a death sentence. Sarah's face went from red to pale in seconds. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. For the first time, she looked powerless. Michael stood frozen, his chest rising and falling rapidly, eyes darting between his wife, his son, and me. I pressed a trembling hand to my heart, my breath ragged. In that moment, I realized everything had shifted. The woman who had mocked me, erased me, humiliated me on Christmas Eve, her mask had been ripped away. And this time, I wasn't the one left standing in the cold. The silence after David's words felt like thunder. "You're finished, Mom." Sarah froze on the couch, her face pale and tight, her hands trembling just slightly on her lap. Michael stood in the middle of the living room, his whole body rigid, like a man who had just discovered the ground beneath him wasn't solid anymore. I sat quietly in the corner, my heart racing. For years, Sarah had painted me as weak, as unwanted, as invisible. But now, for the first time, she was the one exposed. Michael's voice broke the silence. "Sarah," he said slowly, "what else have you lied about?" Sarah's lips parted, but no words came. Her eyes darted between Michael and David, as if searching for a lifeline. David didn't wait. He pulled out his phone, his voice sharp and controlled. "Michael, you need to know the full truth. When I hired a private investigator, I didn't just find Grandma. I found everything." Michael frowned. "Everything? What do you mean?" David turned the screen toward him. "Your wife has been married 4 times. Not once. Not twice. 4. Michael's face strained of color. "That's impossible. She told me about David's father. She said he was her first husband." David shook his head.
No.
"My father was husband number 3. Before him, there were 2 others. Short marriages. Both ended with money missing. And after my father, there was a 4th, an older widower named Robertson. He added her to his life insurance policy 6 months before he conveniently dropped dead of a heart attack." Michael staggered back, gripping the edge of a chair for balance. "You're lying," he whispered. "You have to be lying." "I wish I was," David said coldly. "But I have proof. Marriage certificates. Divorce records. Bank statements. Insurance documents. It's all here." He held the phone out, but Michael didn't take it. He just stared at Sarah, horror spreading across his face. Sarah finally found her voice, though it was high and shaky. "Michael, listen to me. Those marriages, they didn't mean anything. You're different. I love you. I was just trying to survive before I met you." "Survive?" I asked softly, unable to stay silent any longer. "By conning men out of their money? By lying about family? By leaving me out in the cold while you lived in luxury on stolen funds?" Sarah's head snapped toward me, her eyes flashing. "Shut up, you miserable old woman. This is between me and my husband." But Michael's voice cut through hers. "Don't you talk to her like that." His tone was sharp, almost unfamiliar. For the first time in years, he defended me. David leaned forward, his voice low but powerful. "It wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about Grandma. It was about money. All those thousands I sent you, thinking I was helping with family expenses? Every penny went into a private account you set up after marrying Michael. $73,000. That's what we could track. There may be more." Michael's head snapped toward her. $73,000? Sarah's face crumpled. Michael, I used it for us, for vacations, for clothes, for our life together. I wanted us to live well. Michael's voice shook. We had plenty. I make good money. We didn't need his. You stole from your own son.
You stole from me.
And you let my mother freeze outside on Christmas Eve while you laughed with your friends. His words cut the air like a blade. Sarah shrank back against the cushions, her mask slipping completely. I took a shaky breath. Michael, I need you to hear me. That night, I wasn't just turned away. I heard her. I heard Sarah call me a pain no one could stand. I heard you laugh with her. Do you know what that did to me? To stand outside in the freezing cold, after everything I sacrificed for you, and hear you laugh. Michael turned to me, his eyes filling with tears. Mom, I shook my head. Don't say sorry yet. You chose her comfort over my dignity. You let her erase me from your life. And I thought maybe I'd lost you forever. The room was silent except for the sound of Sarah's quick, shallow breathing. Michael dropped into a chair, his hands covering his face.
God.
What have I done? Sarah lunged toward him, desperate. Don't listen to them, Michael. They're twisting things. I did everything for you, for us. You're my whole world. David's laugh was harsh.
No.
He was just your next target. Just another name on your list. Another man to bleed dry. Sarah's eyes filled with angry tears. You ungrateful little brat. I raised you alone. And this is how you repay me? By siding with her? She pointed at me like I was poison. David's face hardened. You didn't raise me. You sent me to boarding school so you could chase your next husband. You missed my graduation because you were busy seducing Robertson. You stole 25 years of memories with my grandmother. You don't deserve the title of mother. The room shook with his words. Sarah's mouth opened, then shut again. For the first time, she looked small. And then a knock at the door.
Sharp. Heavy.
Unmistakable. Through the window, I saw two figures in dark coats standing on the porch. My stomach twisted. David glanced at his watch, then at Sarah. Right on time, he said calmly. Michael looked up, confused. Who is that? David's expression was ice. The FBI. I forwarded the investigators' findings. Fraud, identity theft, suspicious insurance payouts. They're here for her. Sarah's eyes went wide.
No.
You didn't. But David stood, his voice steady. I did. You've run from consequences your whole life. Not this time. Sarah bolted from the couch, rushing toward the back door. But David moved faster. He grabbed her arm, his grip firm. Let me go, she screamed, her voice wild, desperate. No, David said quietly. Not this time. Michael rose slowly, his face pale as the agents knocked again, louder this time. I stayed seated, my chest heaving, my hands trembling. The woman who had humiliated me, who had erased me, who had stolen my family, her world was crumbling right before my eyes. The knocking grew louder. Michael looked at me, his face torn with shame and sorrow. Mom, what do we do? I looked at the door, then back at Sarah, who was trembling now, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. And for the first time, I didn't feel powerless. Open it, I said firmly. It's time the lies finally end. The pounding on the front door echoed through the house. Sarah thrashed in David's grip, her voice breaking into a scream. Michael, don't let them in.
Please.
It's a mistake. Michael stood frozen, his eyes darting from me to David to the door. The agents knocked again, firmer this time. I swallowed hard, my heart racing, and said quietly, Open it, Michael. He hesitated, then walked slowly to the door and pulled it open. Two agents in dark coats stepped inside, badges raised. Mr. Henderson? We're looking for Sarah Henderson, one of them said firmly. Sarah's knees buckled. No, this isn't happening. The agents moved quickly, pulling her hands behind her back and reading her rights. She screamed, sobbed, Cursed, but they didn't waver. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut was sharp, final. They marched her toward the door. At the threshold, she twisted her head toward me, her eyes blazing with hatred. "This isn't over," she spat. "You'll pay for this, old woman." But the agent beside her cut her off. "Ma'am, threatening a witness is another charge. I suggest you stop talking." The door slammed behind them, leaving the house in heavy silence. Michael slumped against the wall, his face pale. David rubbed his hands over his face, finally letting out a shaky breath. And me? I just sat there on the couch, staring at the space where Sarah had stood. For years, she'd silenced me, mocked me, erased me, and now she was gone. But the victory didn't feel sweet. Not yet. Michael finally broke the silence. His voice cracked like glass. "Mom, I don't even know what to say." I looked at him, my chest tightening. "Say the truth, Michael." For once. Tears filled his eyes. "I let her convince me you were the problem, that you were difficult, that you were holding me back. And when she locked you out on Christmas, I didn't even come to the door. I laughed. I laughed while my own mother stood outside in the cold." His voice broke into a sob. "I don't know how you can ever forgive me." I sat still for a long moment, my emotions twisting. Anger.
Love.
Hurt. All of it tangled together. "You're right," I said softly. "You hurt me more than anyone else ever could. Because I raised you. I gave you everything. And you chose her over me." Michael bowed his head. "I know. And I hate myself for it." But then, something unexpected happened. David stepped forward and put a hand on Michael's shoulder. "You don't get to drown in guilt forever," he said firmly. "You made mistakes. Big ones. But if you mean what you say, if you really want to fix this, then prove it. To her. To both of us." Michael looked up at him, surprised. David's voice softened. "We're family. Messy, broken, complicated, but family. And family fights for each other. Even after years of lies." That night blurred into hours of questions from the agents, paperwork, and statements. By the time they left, Sarah was on her way to a federal holding cell, and the three of us were left in the quiet wreckage of Michael's perfect living room. The house suddenly felt different. Not warm and glowing, but cold, staged, like all its beauty had been a mask, just like Sarah. Michael sat beside me on the couch, his face hollow. "Mom, I don't deserve your forgiveness. But can we try again? Can we rebuild?" I looked at him for a long time. I thought of the little boy who once ran into my arms after school, who cried in my bed the night his father died, who made me popsicle stick ornaments with his tiny hands. I also thought of the man who left me in the cold. Both were my son. "I don't know," I admitted honestly. "But I want to try." Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "That's all I can ask." In the weeks that followed, Sarah's arrest became official news.
Fraud. Theft.
Insurance scams. Her trial date was set. Michael filed for divorce immediately, and though the process was ugly, it was swift, thanks to the evidence David had uncovered. The house she loved so much, the cars, the jewelry, all tied to her crimes. Piece by piece, her kingdom crumbled. But in the quiet aftermath, something else began to grow. Michael called me every day, sometimes twice. At first, the conversations were heavy with guilt, but over time, they softened. We talked about normal things, what I ate for breakfast, what book he was reading, how work was going. David became a constant in my life. He visited often, bringing flowers, food, or just as company. We laughed together, cooked together. He even fixed my leaky faucet, insisting he wasn't going to let his grandmother live without comfort. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I was loved. One evening, a month after Sarah's arrest, Michael showed up at my apartment with takeout. He set the food down, then turned to me, his eyes steady. "Mom," he said, "I'm seeing a therapist. To deal with the guilt. To deal with everything. I want to be better. For you. For me. For David." My eyes filled with tears. I nodded. "That's a start." We ate together that night, laughter bubbling in between bites of noodles and fried rice. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for once, I felt like I wasn't carrying the weight alone. But not every moment was easy. Sometimes, when Michael looked at me, I still heard his laughter from that night. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I still saw Sarah's sneer through the half-open door. Healing wasn't a straight path. It was messy, painful, but it was a path I was finally walking with my family by my side. David, always the bold one, said it best one night when we were sitting in my living room. "Grandma," he said, "Sarah thought she won by isolating us. She thought if she lied long enough, we'd forget about each other. But she underestimated love. It doesn't disappear. It waits. And when truth comes out, it's even stronger." I reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. "You're right, sweetheart. She stole years from us. But she didn't steal our future." 6 months later, my life looked nothing like it had on that frozen Christmas Eve. Sarah sat behind bars, awaiting a trial that promised decades in prison. Michael was rebuilding his life, free of her web. And David was no longer a stranger. He was my grandson, my friend, my ally. One Sunday evening, we gathered in my little apartment for dinner.
Michael brought wine.
David brought dessert. We laughed, shared stories, and even argued over who got the last slice of pie. For the first time in decades, I felt like I belonged at my own table. I looked around at their faces, warmed by candlelight, and thought to myself, this is what family should feel like. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And as we cleared the plates and said goodnight, I realized something else. The best revenge against someone who tried to erase you is not anger, or bitterness, or even justice. It's living loved. And that, at last, was exactly what I was doing. 1 year later, Christmas came again. But this time, everything was different. Snow still fell heavy that December night, blanketing the streets in silence. But instead of pulling up alone to Michael's house and standing shivering on the porch, I was in a new home. Our home. It wasn't the biggest house on the block. It wasn't fancy, like Michael's old place. But it was warm, welcoming, alive. Photos lined the walls, some old, some new. Michael as a child, David as a boy, and now, pictures of us together. Smiles genuine, eyes bright. Proof that love had survived lies. The scent of roast chicken filled the kitchen. David was bustling around, helping me set the table. Michael poured wine, humming softly, something I hadn't heard him do since he was a boy. And me? I stood in the middle of it all, taking it in. This, I thought, is what Christmas should feel like. David grinned as he placed a candle on the table. "Grandma, do you realize this is our first Christmas all together? Like, really together?" I smiled, wiping my hands on a towel. "I do. And I think it's the best gift I could ever ask for." Michael looked up then, his eyes meeting mine.
"No, Mom.
"The best gift is you forgiving me enough to let me back into your life." My chest tightened. For months, he had been rebuilding trust, brick by brick. Therapy sessions, long talks, small acts of kindness. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever would be, but he was trying. And I could see the boy I once knew shining through the man again. I reached over, squeezing his hand. "We can't rewrite the past, Michael. But we can write the future. And tonight, that's enough." Dinner was simple, but filled with laughter. We told stories, David about his mischievous dog Murphy, Michael about childhood mishaps I hadn't heard in years. I shared memories of Christmases long gone, when Jim was still alive and Michael was small. At one point, David lifted his glass. "To family," he said. Michael and I echoed softly, "To family." For the first time in decades, those words didn't feel hollow. After dinner, we exchanged gifts. Mine were modest, scarves I knitted by hand, a framed photo of Jim holding baby Michael. But when David opened his and pulled out the scarf, he wrapped it around his neck proudly. "Best gift ever," he said with a grin. Michael held the photo frame for a long moment. His eyes shimmered with tears as he whispered, I'd forgotten this picture. I touched his arm gently. Your father would have been proud of you, Michael. Even with everything. I know he would. Tears slid down his cheek. Thank you, Mom. Later that night, after the dishes were washed and David left to call his girlfriend Emma, I stepped outside with a cup of tea. The porch light cast a warm glow over the snow. I stood there for a long time, breathing in the crisp air, watching the flakes fall softly. Last Christmas, I had stood on another porch.
Cold.
Alone. Unwanted. This Christmas, I stood on my own porch, wrapped in warmth, surrounded by love. The difference wasn't the snow, or the lights, or even the house. The difference was me. I had survived being erased. I had found my voice again. I had seen the truth break through lies. And I had learned that revenge isn't always loud or cruel. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is simply living a life filled with love after someone tried to steal it from you. Michael joined me then, stepping outside with his coat. He stood beside me in silence for a while, sipping his own tea. Finally, he said quietly, Mom, I don't deserve this second chance. But I promise you I'll never waste it. I turned my head toward him. We all make mistakes, Michael. What matters is what we do after. And tonight, I see a man who wants to do better. That's enough. He nodded, his eyes shining in the porch light. I love you, Mom. I smiled softly. I love you too, son. When he went back inside, I lingered for a while, watching the snow. Somewhere out there, Sarah was sitting in a prison cell, probably still blaming me, still convincing herself she was the victim. But I didn't think of her long, because tonight wasn't about her. Tonight was about us, about survival, about healing, about finally being seen. I lifted my cup of tea to the sky, whispering a quiet promise to myself. I am not erased. I am not forgotten. I am loved. And as long as I breathe, that love will outshine every lie.